In 1992, the Fox Kids lineup consisted of shows like Bobby's World, Eek the Cat, and Dog City. That year, comic book fans were blessed with arguably the greatest superhero cartoon of all time, with Batman being the only contender that comes close, in my opinion. Of course, I'm talking about X-Men the Animated Series. From the humble beginnings when Jubilee joined the Academy, to Xavier and Magneto going astray in the Savage Land. From the Dark Phoenix saga to the epic showdown with Apocalypse. From the crossover episodes with Captain America and Spider-Man to the emotional farewell from Professor Charles Xavier and everything in between. 29 years later, fans rejoiced as a continuation series called X-Men 97 was announced. Now, Season 1 has officially wrapped up and I'm here to talk about it. Catastrophic explosions, human cyborgs, multiple complex love triangles, the deaths of beloved characters, lies and betrayal, the highs, the lows. Was it better than the original or was it a flop? Fan theories, predictions, we're gonna dive into all of it. So grab a drink or a bowl of cereal if you're feeling really nostalgic, kick back and enjoy as we take a closer look at X-Men 97. Now, I know for an absolute fact that I wasn't the only one nervous about this series. Like many others, I had a lot of concerns. Would they be able to capture the feel of the original from the 90s? Would they dumb it down and make it family friendly? Would they give it the modern day Disney treatment and go the woke route? Would they nail those small signature nuances that made us love the show initially? Or would this just be an effortless project they outsourced to some animators solely meant to be a cash grab? Let me tell you, all of those thoughts immediately went down the drain the second I saw the updated intro. In a matter of seconds, I felt like a damn kid again, man. The intro is better than it ever looked, sharing some similarities from the original while obviously inserting a bunch of new footage. And of course, they wouldn't dare change the theme song. Now, I don't know, I've seen a handful of people complaining about the instrumentation or some shit like that, but honestly, I just think either they have too much time on their hands or they're being overly nitpicky. Come on, this is incredible. The intro concludes, and just like that, we're off to the races. So let's not waste any more time. At first glance, I was blown away. Everything looks beautiful, and in motion, it looks even better. The colors are bright and vibrant and seem to just pop off the screen, especially if you're watching on an OLED monitor. We resume right where things left off, which I appreciate. I'm glad they didn't decide to pick up the story in the distant future, leaving us wondering what the hell conspired over the years or anything like that. The episode starts, and I must say I was highly disappointed. I made reference to small nuances earlier. I would have bet anything that they would have started the episode with a "previously on X-Men" to bring back the old feeling, but it's nowhere to be found. Come on, that was too easy. That just seemed like a layup to me, but they dropped the ball on that one. The series kicks off with a news report confirming Xavier's death. Then we flash to a Friends of Humanity warehouse where a couple of thugs kidnap a young kid. His identity is revealed to be Roberto da Costa. We see him wearing a superpower suppressing collar, identical to the ones we first seen in episode 7 of the original series, which leads us to believe this kid is in fact a mutant. Those deep into the Marvel comic lore should know exactly who this is by the name. The X-Men break into the warehouse in attempt of saving the boy, but they get into a clash with the thugs. One of the opposing leaders activate a dismembered Sentinel arm, and Roberto narrowly escapes his demise. After an explosion, you can freeze frame on a Daily Bugle newspaper that flies by for a cool little Easter egg. You see, it's little instances like this that make you appreciate the attention to detail. Honestly, this shit is top tier, man. Back at the mansion, Jean comes out sporting a baby bump, confirming that her and Cyclops are expecting. Hey, congrats. The Roberto kid awakens in the lab and the X-Men start to question him, as he's the only lead to finding out how the Friends of Humanity thugs got Sentinel technology. Unfortunately, he's clueless, but agrees to stay with the team as they figure things out. National Security Advisor Dr. Cooper dials into the mansion and has a FaceTime call with Cyclops and Jean. Bolivar Trask is labeled a person of interest, as his company produces the Sentinels. The couple then share a somber moment, as Xavier's death certificate was just mailed to the residence. Jean is already displaying mother-like tendencies as she pitches the idea of leaving the team so their son could have a better, more normal life.
With the baby coming, maybe it's time to think of a life beyond the X-Men?
Later that night, they discover Roberto wasn't too fond of the mansion and that he ran away. Wolverine picks up his scent at a nearby nightclub, so they head over to dance, drink, and hopefully locate the missing mutant. While getting toasted at the bar, Morph and Wolverine discuss suspicions of Cyclops and Jean exiting the group, solely because the Academy is no place for a baby. They eventually find Roberto and dip out. In hopes of extracting intel on Trask and his secret location, the X-Men visit Henry Gyrick in captivity. This sick right here, this is the guy who attacked and killed the Professor back in the 90s series. In exchange for cooperation, they offer to drop his 25-year sentence down to 10. During the interrogation, Jean sneakily uses her powers to read Gyrick's mind, but something goes wrong. While accessing his cerebral, Jean has an extremely dark premonition where everyone is obliterated, including her own child. Knowing a dark future lies ahead, it's now imperative that they find where Trask is hiding. Jean's psychic scan points to the Sahara Desert, so the X-Men aboard their Blackbird jet and take off. This frame right here is where it all set in for me, man. I officially felt like a kid again. Seeing all the original cast in their signature costumes from the 90s series, everyone looks great. Cyclops, you see Storm with the new hairdo, okay, not too shabby. Wolverine, Beast, and of course, my absolute favorite, the badass motherfucking Gambit. Remy's been my boy since day one, man. So, while I was busy admiring how great everyone looked, I was taken aback when a damn Sentinel snatches them out of the sky. On the ground, they find Trask, who is being protected by several Sentinels. The X-Men then embark in an epic fight where they ultimately destroy all of their opposition. Or so they thought. The metal contraptions are ready for round 2, and that's when Cyclops tells Storm to get active.
Surrender. Give him the forecast.
Storm reaches her highest potential and releases a devastating attack. She kicks up a storm in the middle of the desert and turns the tiny grains of sand into these little ice shards that completely shred the Sentinels to pieces. Master Mold then appears, but Wolverine and of course, the badass motherfucking Gambit make quick work of him. Trask is arrested, Dr. Cooper thanks the X-Men, and everybody goes home for a well-deserved sleep. The next day, Roberto is slowly coming out of his shell as he displays his superpower to Jubilee, the ability to absorb solar energy to make himself more powerful. To celebrate the recent completed mission, the X-Men decide to go out back and release their inner Jordan. While putting up some threes, Cyclops and Jean decide it's a perfect time to make the announcement of their departure from the group. Rudely, that speech was interrupted by an intruder who broke into the mansion. As they rush inside, they find Magneto, who is reading Professor Xavier's final wishes in the form of a will. Turns out, Xavier had so much love and trust for Magneto that he left the X-Men and the whole Academy in the hands of his old friend, with the hopes he'd carry out his dream of achieving a peaceful, mutant-human coexistence. Then we roll right into which would be my favorite episode. And side note, just when I thought they dropped the ball, just when I thought they got rid of it for good, we're hit with the signature.
Previously on X-Men.
Yes! Yes! That is all I wanted. So Magneto comes to the rescue as disaster was about to strike at Coney Island. After saving many lives, it sparks up conversation about a possible mutant-human coexistence. Continuing his good deeds, Magneto goes into the sewers where the Morlocks are being abused. He detains the humans, leaving them alive, while saving the fellow mutants. Back at the headquarters, Magneto makes his first move as the new leader, and arranges for the rescued Morlocks to go and be safe in the nation of Genosha. The X-Men are a bit skeptical and don't fully trust that Magneto plans to live out the Professor's dream.
You must understand, you have been our fiercest foe for years. A desire for you to prove yourself is only natural.
Later that afternoon, Jean and Storm have a deep talk about life. She tells Storm she doesn't want her child to be a mutant, living day by day looking over his shoulder. Jean would briefly hint at her deadly premonition and say she can't help but feel something terrible is on the way. She also feels she might sound overly paranoid or even sound like a fool.
No, Jean. You sound like a mother.
That night, we see Magneto and Rogue share a moment, and the narrative alludes to the two of them having a relationship in the past. This part right here pissed me the hell off. Nobody wants to see Rogue with Magneto. She clearly belongs with my boy, Gambit. Hey, don't let me find out Rogue is for the streets, huh? Don't let me find out. But anywho, Dr. Cooper, backed by armed forces, arrive at the mansion to arrest Magneto on past terrorism charges. He goes peacefully and agrees to stand trial in hopes of being proven innocent, which will surely gain trust from the humans. While watching the trial on TV, Jean lets Wolverine know that someone unexpected has arrived.
Apocalypse?
The baby!
Oh, crap.
Meanwhile, at the Magneto vs. the World trial, protesters have breached the perimeter. The angry mob is upset the government gave Magneto a trial instead of an immediate death penalty. In the middle of the anarchy, Beast scans a serious threat in the area named Executioner. This new threat beats the dog shit out of Bishop and then gives Cyclops the business. In the middle of getting his ass kicked, Cyclops receives a telepathic message from Jean saying the baby is on the way. So Rogue flies Cyclops away, and Storm demands the humans free Magneto so they can go to battle at full power. Over at the hospital, the racist doctor refuses to give birth to a mutant, so Rogue uses her powers to siphon the racist doctor's medical expertise. Back at the courthouse, things are getting intense. Magneto is standing on business and holding shit down with help from Storm. Executioner takes aim and fires in attempt to kill Magneto. Being loyal to her new leader, Storm jumps in the way and absorbs the blast. Immediately, she cannot feel the breeze or any of the elements anymore. She's powerless. Dr. Cooper assures the mutants this isn't what they wanted. Magneto believes this is exactly what the humans dreamed about. All of the mutants kneeling down before them, hurt, powerless, and afraid. He goes on to plead that all the X-Men have done was try to protect a world that hates and fears them, then promises never again. He uses his power to uproot the whole courtroom and takes the humans way up into the atmosphere. Now, this part here was honestly breathtaking. Impeccable writing mixed with the perfect voice acting and an intense, triumphant sounding orchestra. The dialogue right here sent chills down my spine. My spine! Magneto is about to go back to his true beliefs, which is mutants and humans cannot coexist. Right as he's about to kill the humans, he gives a bone-chilling speech about it being a shared world with a common future, and that his kind, like the humans, have the right to live in it. He spares their lives because an old friend of his entrusted him with his dream of mutant-human coexistence. He's trying to be a better person, and he concludes with one request.
Do not make me let you down.
Jean successfully gives birth to a baby boy named Nathan, and as a kind gesture for sparing their lives, the United Nations give Magneto a pardon. Beast does further studies on the blast that hit Storm. Unfortunately, it looks like the damage is irreparable and she's lost her powers permanently. Seeing she's a useless, powerless human now, she decides to leave the team. She gives her goodbye in the form of a letter that she left for Jean. As the letter is read aloud for the rest of the team, they're interrupted by the doorbell. To everyone's surprise, Jean's identical twin sister is standing at the door in obvious distress. But in episode 3, we learn that Jean in fact does not have a twin sister, of course. Beast does some studies and confirms that one of these women are a clone. Shockingly, the one that showed up at the door is the original, which means the Jean who has been living amongst them, the one who gave birth to baby Cyclops, is none other than an imposter, which puts Cyclops in this weird love triangle with Jean OG and Jean 2.0. Beast does some further testing on the DNA samples and determines the clone was created by Mr. Sinister, the evil scientist who's obsessed with the fusion of genetics. That night, Sinister contacts Jean 2.0 over a baby monitor to let her know that he created her and that she is fully under his control. He morphs her into her new evil form known as the Goblin Queen. The Queen fulfills her master's command and brings him the baby of Jean and Cyclops. The X-Men don't want her to take the baby, so they chase her all the way to the depths of hell in an attempt to stop her. They fail, and the baby is delivered to Sinister. He reveals that the combined genetics of Cyclops and Jean have unlimited potential. With this DNA, he could breed an army of virtually perfect creation. Right as the X-Men are about to lose the brawl with the Goblin Queen, Jean OG attacks her telepathically.
You are nothing!
The two have an internal battle in the deepest realms of her cerebral, which ultimately breaks the Sinister mind control over Jean 2.0, leaving her a shell of a human with no real name or true identity. Jean 2.0 works alongside the X-Men to get her son back from Sinister. When they rescue baby Nathan, they're alarmed due to the techno-organic virus Sinister planted inside of him. Bishop is tasked with traveling through time with the child in hopes of finding a period where the cure exists. Jean OG and Jean 2.0 say their goodbyes, as the X-Men only need one telepath. Seeing as Jean OG was there first and isn't a flagrant carbon copy, Jean 2.0 is forced to hit the bricks. Jean 2.0 says she's going to look for a job or a hobby and announces her new identity. Going forward, she'll be known as Madeline Pryor. The episode wraps up with the powerless Storm at a random bar in Texas. She meets an old friend of Xavier's named Forge, and he claims he can help her get her powers back. A strange little episode that I personally felt was rushed. From solving the clone mystery, to battling Sinister, to sending the baby to the future, to the Madeline Pryor arc. They probably could have benefited by making this a two-part episode to let things breathe a bit more, especially when the next episode is mostly filler. So, it's Jubilee's 18th birthday and the homies ask her what she wants to do to celebrate. Oddly enough, she just wants to chill out at the arcade, but nobody else is in the mood for video games. She spends the day in her room playing Motendo with Roberto. Now, Motendo is a portmanteau combining the words Nintendo and, of course, Mojo. We first seen this guy back in episode 24 of the original. So, Mojo puts Jubilee and Roberto in the game to entertain his audience of slaves, and they have to escape or lose their lives. Aside from Roberto and Jubilee developing a relationship, not too much storyline here, but it is kind of cool to see her relive her memories through these 16-bit generated levels. The episode concludes with an important update on Storm and her mission to regain her powers. Forge is also starting to develop feelings for her, and this strange demonic owl keeps following her. I'm sure we'll learn more about that later. Meh. Filler episode in my opinion. Which brings us to my favorite episode. And I know I said that before, but this is my new favorite episode, which speaks to the show and its ability to continuously raise the bar. So, a news report confirms the alliance between humans and mutants. The mutant nation of Genosha is about to join the UN and officially be recognized as a part of society. The X-Men celebrate by taking a trip to the beautiful nation known as the Mutant Utopia. It looks absolutely stunning. It's animated beautifully and the vast array of colors is breathtaking. Everyone is living in pure harmony and you see the mutants in their happiest form. Gave me a feeling similar to when Wakanda was first revealed in Black Panther. So they're greeted by Jean 2.0, Madeline Pryor. She was able to quickly find a new career on the Genosha Committee. The council decided to appoint Magneto the leader of the nation. He's hesitant at first, but then agrees under one stipulation. Rogue must lead alongside him as his queen. Here we go with the Rogue Nito crap again. Gambit. Looks like she's for the streets, bruh. No good. She belongs to the streets. Cyclops is caught telepathically cheating with Madeline Pryor, making the love triangle that more confusing. He loves Jean, but Madeline is the mother of his child. Tough predicament to be in. We cut back to Rogue, who does the respectable thing and tells Gambit all about her and Magneto. She explains she is afraid to get intimate with Gambit in fear of draining his powers and seriously hurting him, or worse. a problem she doesn't have to worry about with Magneto because he's immune to her powers. She goes on to tell Gambit that Magneto asked her to be his queen. Gambit tells her, "When you're done playing around in the streets, give me a call. But until then, we're strictly friends." That night at the Celebration Gala, things get steamy between Rogue and Magneto. They dance extremely sexually as a heartbroken Gambit stares, as if he was watching his high school crush dance with the popular kid at prom or something like that. Gambit walks out early, leaving the rest up to his imagination, which one could say is an even worse visual. Shockingly, after borderline penetrating on the dance floor, Toxic Rogue declines his offer, confirming that she's badly confused, or she most definitely is for the streets. Out of nowhere, Madeline's nose begins to bleed, so she steps outside for some fresh air. Cable, the time-traveling mutant, appears and attempts to get people out of the building. Madeline gazes deep into his eyes and recognizes that he is her son. Cable realizes he's too late, and before going back through the time portal, he tells his mom that he's sorry. And then all hell breaks loose. An insanely powerful modified Tri-Sentinel unleashes a catastrophic attack on the nation of Genosha, immediately killing Madeline and several other familiar faces while sending the survivors into a panic. Magneto leads his team to war, while Rogue and Gambit head to the sewers to try to save as many Morlocks as possible. Magneto hits his highest potential and attacks by throwing the Metro system at the Sentinel. During the final standoff, the laser beam proves too strong for Magneto to stand up to. He calmly says, "Hab kein Angst," which is German for "Don't be afraid." Magneto is killed. Leech is killed, as well as thousands of the mutants that were in the blast radius. Rogue is blinded with rage and foolishly attacks the Sentinel head-on. Gambit chases her and saves her from meeting the same fate as Magneto. Gambit, moving incredibly agile, makes his way all the way up to the machine and winds up to deliver the final death blow. Gambit gets impaled in the most theatrical fashion. But before he goes down, he uses kinetic energy to charge the Sentinel up until it explodes. The absent team members are back at the mansion watching the tragedy unfold on the news. We then cut back to Rogue, who is holding Gambit's lifeless body, as she says the final chilling words in the episode.
I can't feel you.
I told you she was for the streets, man. I told you. Now look. You're dead. Dead. Meanwhile, in a faraway galaxy, Lilandra, the Empress of the Shi'ar, is about to get married. To whom, you ask? None other than Professor Charles fucking Xavier. Yes, he's alive and well. Back in 1997, during the finale of the original series, we seen the two of them fly off in hopes of finding a cure, so it looks like everything worked out for the best. The family doesn't quite trust his kind, so they make a proposal. Xavier must completely wipe all of his memories of Earth to prove his loyalty to the Shi'ar people. But in the end, he can't bring himself to erase those precious X-Men memories. He then gets a vision that there's unknown trouble back home.
No! They were dancing, drinking wine, making love!
Yes, apparently all along, Xavier was telepathically keeping an eye on his X-Men. When they were dancing, when they were drinking wine, and especially when they were making love. Oh, Xavier. he does give off freaky ass boy vibes. He a fan. Anywho, with danger now confirmed, Xavier decides to go back home to be with his X-Men. Elsewhere, Storm must go on a journey within to conquer her fears. She eventually regains her elemental powers and defeats that demon owl that was following her around. The episode ends with Oliver Trask, the creator of the Sentinels, being beaten and abused by the evil Mr. Sinister. Like episode 4, this one felt like a filler episode. Got a little backstory and Storm is back in the game, but after such a big episode to follow up with this, it was just kinda meh. We then receive the confirmation of my boy Gambit's death, as we see the team at his funeral with Nightcrawler leading the service. Everyone is grieving, everyone except for a certain someone. Jubilee calls her out saying,
How How could she not be here? He saved all of us.
She's not here because she's a mad woman from the streets out for revenge. Rogue is working around the clock to find Henry Gyrick and Bolivar Trask so she can avenge the death of her loved ones. The X-Men head back to what remains of Genosha to offer relief to the survivors. Beast talks to Nurse Amelia, who once thought everyone naturally wants to be a survivor. But after seeing all the carnage, dismembered body parts, and devastation in people's eyes, she says,
A survivor is the last thing I'd want to be.
On the hunt for Gyrick, Rogue bumps into Captain America. We last seen him in episode 73 of the animated series. He also came to this specific location looking for Gyrick, but intel shows he was transported to Mexico City. He says he can't assist Rogue on her mission because if he shows up brawling in Mexico with that patriotic uniform of his, it'll send an alarming message on behalf of the country. Rogue says, if you're not gonna help me, stay the fuck out of my way, and throws his shield away frisbee style. Eventually, Rogue finds Gyrick's location, but he doesn't know where Trask is. He warns her that Trask isn't the one she needs to focus on. There's a much bigger threat that she should be worried about. Back in Genosha, Jubilee argues with Roberto because he still hasn't told his parents that he's a mutant. Then, Jean's psychic abilities scan through the rubble and debris and locate a living telepath named Emma Frost. The discovery of one living mutant brings a sense of hope and happiness to the land. Trask FaceTimes the X-Men and tells them Sinister forced him to make the Deadly Sentinel, but he'd like to meet in person. So the X-Men head off in his direction. We cut to Gyrick talking to a mysterious person with his back turned. This person is furious that Gyrick told Rogue there's a big threat she needs to worry about, and the mystery man kills him. The X-Men meet Trask and it looks like he's having a bad day. As he hangs from the edge of a building about to commit suicide, the X-Men try to get information out of him. He tells them Sinister is building Sentinels even deadlier than the ones that recently destroyed Genosha, and he no longer wants to live knowing he's the creator of the deadly machines. Trask flings himself off the edge, but Rogue stops his attempt and tells him to work alongside the X-Men. After he declines, Rogue uncharacteristically drops him to a bloody death. Good riddance. The creator of the Sentinels that killed thousands of mutants is now dead and gone. Until he comes back as a human turned cyborg, otherwise known as a Prime Sentinel.
Prime Sentinel Protocol activated. Terminate mutants.
They get into a brawl with the insanely OP Sentinel and get taken down one by one. The bus ass was so bad that Rogue was beaten into a damn coma. Cyclops is about to be killed when a grenade goes off, destroying cyborg zombie Trask in the process. Cyclops thanks Cable for saving his life. After gazing deep into each other's eyes in this badass moment, the two acknowledge they are father and son, but have no time to get sentimental. Cable lets the X-Men know that they're in way over their heads, because as bad as Sinister is, he's just a puppet and he reports to someone much worse. We then see Sinister meeting with his boss. Kinda looks like the same mystery man who killed Gyrick moments ago. His identity is revealed to be a corrupt US government worker named Bastion. He goes on to reveal he's been keeping surveillance on Xavier and he knows he's alive. Speaking of alive, Bastion has a little secret of his own. We then see Magneto, who was presumed dead, tied up and gagged, wearing a power-suppressing collar. Now, we're in the final stretch. The season wraps up with a 3-part finale called Tolerance is Extinction. Having the privilege of time travel, Cable is well versed on Bastion and gives the X-Men more information on the villain. He tells the team that after the Genosha massacre, Bastion starts a 300-year evolutionary war. This war would eventually phase mutants out, leaving any survivors to be utilized and used as slaves. When asked, Cable reveals that he couldn't time travel to stop the Genosha massacre because of an absolute point, an event that occurs indefinitely across all timelines and futures. Cable wants to avenge his dead mother, so he joins the X-Men for the mission. We cut to a news report discussing the fact that Professor Xavier is alive and claims he faked his death. Then they reveal that Henry Gyrick was recently killed, presumably by a mutant. The X-Men catch the play and realize Bastion is painting a narrative to turn humans on mutants and start the 300-year war that Cable warned them about. Later on, Jean talks with Nightcrawler about confusion surrounding Cable. She wants to love him, but feels reserved because she knows that he's not her son. She shares all of Madeline's memories. She remembers the pregnancy, the delivery, and even holding him. But she knows her clone was the true birth parent.
Blood is blood. Family is a choice.
Beast pinpoints Bastion's location to a small town in Pennsylvania, so the Summers family heads off to confront him. A quick cut to Dr. Cooper, who is sent to gather more information about Bastion's new master plan. When she sees Magneto being held hostage, she sees the obvious anger in him as he refuses to say a word to anyone. The family arrives, but it's not what they expected. It's actually Bastion's childhood home. They illegally trespass and make their way inside when they're startled by Bastion's mom, who's just sitting around hanging out, I guess. Without permission, they start roaming the house and enter Bastion's bedroom. Jean scans the room and we get some more backstory. Long story short, Bastion's father was infected with advanced Sentinel technology. So when Bastion was born, he had the genes of an insanely powerful human Sentinel hybrid. Bastion informs Dr. Cooper of his new master plan, Operation Zero Tolerance. He goes on to explain mutants have been threatening the need for humans for years. You could lay off 12 people and hire one mutant with the strength of 10 men to accomplish the same tasks. What's a taxi driver to do when a teleporter gets a patron there in an instant? Humans are terrified they will one day be irrelevant. This new master plan eliminates that fear. He demonstrates on some random hillbilly as he dips the man into the same green techno-organic substance we seen Baby Cable submerged in back in episode 3. This will greatly raise their potential, with the small hidden side effect of being turned into a human cyborg, otherwise known as a Prime Sentinel. Dr. Cooper is less than impressed with Bastion's plan, as it almost sounds as if he's weaponizing civilians.
You sound like a dinosaur fretting the fate of an asteroid before impact.
Back at Bastion's home, the mother shows the trespassers a painting her son drew called The Final Dream. Oh, and this picture is just horrifying. You can tell something was most definitely wrong with this Sebastian dude when he was a kid. No rainbows, no lollipops or smiling suns, but fire, demonic creatures, and killing machines. Whose brain functions like this at such a young age? So, while everyone is admiring the disturbing artwork, the mom turns into a goddamn Prime Sentinel. Then we see Jubilee and Roberto hanging out, and his butler turns into a goddamn Prime Sentinel. Before you know it, the whole damn town is turning into these cyborg zombies. Beast is in his lab receiving live updates and sees the amount of Prime Sentinels spreading like a virus. The Summers family end up getting into a fight with all of Bastion's neighbors, but are forced to retreat due to being outnumbered. Things are getting worse. Now there's hundreds, if not thousands, of the corrupted humans floating around. We then see an angry mob protesting out front the Xavier Academy. Suddenly, some of the civilians are revealed to be infected. They start to destroy the place and breach the front entrance. The corrupted are about to kill an unconscious rogue when Wolverine and Nightcrawler get into an epic fight. Sadly, just when they think it's over, they see dozens more on the horizon. Jubilee, who is on the run, decides there's no hope left and recklessly jumps off of a building, committing suicide. Rest in peace, young lady. But wait! Roberto reveals he can fly, and he saves her from splatting on the pavement below. Unfortunately, the Summers family is in a bit of trouble, as the Sentinels are destroying the jet and they are about to crash and die. That is, until Cyclops reveals he has a Porsche in the back. Yes, a fucking Porsche. They use it to escape and defeat the enemies in the most epic fashion possible. Bastion arrives at the destroyed mansion to admire his work, when he's interrupted by an important call from Mr. Sinister. He lets him know that Dr. Cooper released Magneto from captivity. This is definitely a cause for a little concern, so Bastion leaves abruptly. Cooper admits the Genosha massacre was far too inhumane and hasn't been sitting right with her soul. To right the wrong, she freed the prisoner who didn't deserve to be held captive for defending his people. Then we see a vengeful Magneto who reaches his highest potential and unleashes a devastating attack. he triggers a global EMP that knocks the power out worldwide, causing thousands of Prime Sentinels to rain from the sky above. Back at Ground Zero, Wolverine is afraid that Magneto's worldwide attack has officially declared war between mutants and the humans.
Where's the professor when you need him?
Now, you can call it coincidence or the law of television, because at that exact moment, the professor makes a crash landing and summons his team. We see an emotional Bastion carrying his dead cyborg zombie mom, which most definitely ignites a burning rage inside of him. Back on the X-Men side of things, Storm is back. She arrives with Forge and old friends are reunited. Moments later, Cyclops and the Professor get into a heated argument. Cyclops is mad that he left Magneto in charge of the Academy and it resulted in anarchy. Xavier explains he wanted Cyclops and his family to go live and be free, and that's why he was overlooked for the position. But Cyclops isn't trying to hear all the excuses, and he rudely leaves the Professor hanging. Rogue finally awakens from her coma, and then the X-Men have a team meeting. They agree to split up into two groups. One group is assigned the task of finding Magneto in hopes of convincing him to reverse the effects of the EMP. The other group is assigned the task of finding and hopefully killing Bastion. Beast did some more research and discovered the Prime Sentinels are connected to a server and being controlled by an end user. The Professor reveals more about the villain. Turns out that Bastion is the server. He's a technopath and can control all the Prime Sentinels with his mind. Later on, Magneto and Xavier are having a disagreement about future actions. Xavier still believes in a mutant-human coexistence, while Magneto has hatred for the humans and wants to create a new Genosha. Magneto proposes the idea to the X-Men and tells them to choose a side. Roberto and Rogue are tired of seeing their kind being slaughtered, so they side with Magneto, while the others stay with the Professor. The president of the free world has a meeting with Xavier, as he wants a resolution sooner than later.
Not a lunatic, merely a man trying to survive in a world that has proven his worst fears true.
The two teams assemble and head off to their respective missions. Team 1 arrives in the Galapagos Islands looking for Bastion, but end up getting into a fight with Sentinels. Then, Mr. Sinister gets into it with Jean. Team 2 arrives on Asteroid M, where Magneto plans to create his new utopia. Rogue and Roberto try to stop their friends from getting to Magneto, but with some persistence, they get through. Xavier tries his best to convince his friend to reverse the damage he's done to the Earth.
Shut up.
Cut back to the island, where the fight between Sinister and Jean has escalated, and it's about to reach its climax. We then see Cable with the same red diamond we saw Madeline prior with, which means he's under Sinister's mind control. He uses Cable to unleash a deadly attack on Jean. She tries her best to fend off the powerful beam, but when she feels she's losing the battle, she sends a telepathic goodbye to the love of her life.
Scott, I love you.
Back on Asteroid M, the team confronts Magneto, but he isn't going down without a fight. Wolverine knocks his helmet off, exposing his mind. The Professor accesses it and is attacking him telepathically. Cyclops intervenes because they still need Magneto alive. Having almost died, he gets enraged, calls the Professor a traitor, and attacks him. Wolverine steps in and stabs Magneto in the back, literally. And that's the end of that, right? Well, back in the original series, it was revealed that Wolverine had special adamantium metal injected in his body, so Magneto uses his powers to rip the damn metal right out of his flesh. There's no way. Not my two favorites. First, motherfucking Gambit, and now Wolverine? No. Xavier and Magneto are hanging out at the bar having a drink and conversation. It's not long before Magneto realizes his friend is playing mind tricks. Seeing Xavier already has access, he uses this time to force Magneto to reverse the damages he did to Earth. Bastion unlocks a powerful new form and is about to put an end to Cable. Then in an absolutely jaw-dropping scene, the Phoenix appears. She terminates the connection between Bastion and all of his machines. We see her reverse Sinister's powers, which frees Cable from his mind control. After exhausting her energy, Jean comes back. This is when Bastion takes the opportunity to wreak some more havoc. He plans to grab Asteroid M and slam it into the Earth, potentially causing extinction. For safe measure, he beats Cable up, evolves into an even more powerful form, and sets off to destroy the planet. When Xavier accessed Magneto's mind earlier, he unintentionally did a bit of damage. Turns out he shattered his mind and left him in a coma, so the professor spends time in his subconscious trying to remind him of his identity. And hey, looks like Wolverine isn't actually dead, but he is in critical condition. Rogue unleashes her built-up rage and attacks Bastion. Roberto joins the fight and announces his cool new superhero name is Sunspot. Nightcrawler, Cyclops, and Jubilee also tag themselves into the fight. After putting up insane resistance, Bastion and Cyclops are squaring off face to face until Cyclops overpowers him.
You'll never hurt my family again!
After Bastion refuses to die, Cyclops tells his team to stand down. They plan to do what they've been begging humanity to do: stop fighting the future and embrace it. The US government fired multiple missiles at the asteroid in hopes of destroying it. The plan backfired, and the Force sends the floating rock barreling towards Earth. Meanwhile, Xavier is working in the depths of Magneto's mind. He finally gets through, bringing Magneto back to full power. In the end, the X-Men alongside Magneto work in perfect unison to stop the asteroid, but they're all presumed dead. Months later, Bishop tells Forge that the X-Men are accessible through time travel. Cyclops and Jean ended up in the future, while the rest are in ancient times. If you stayed post-credits, then you were surprised with an Apocalypse appearance, hinting at Season 2 events. And that is Season 1 in a nutshell. Highly recommend you check it out on your own, because if I went fully in depth, this would have been a 2-hour video easily. All in all, I'm happy. They over-delivered in my opinion. But to nobody's surprise, this show had to be good. They knew the ramifications if they fucked this one up. So the fact that this even exists and they released it lets me know they knew they had something special on their hands, or else this would have been vaulted and never seen the light of day. Now, I see the question floating all over. Is X-Men 97 better than X-Men the animated series? I mean, yeah, it looks great, sounds great, and has insane writing. But the animated series had to walk so X-Men 97 could run, you know? They knew the fan base of the original are all adults now, so they leaned into that. It has a much darker, grittier feeling to it that I like. And hey, if you don't feel this was better than the original, I get it. The original is tied to more than just the show. It's tied to nostalgia, it's tied to our childhoods. Back in the good old days when the world was a huge place and life was easy. Some cornflakes, some sugar, and you sit in front of the TV and life was great. Simpler times. But in the end, this is only Season 1. They've been renewed for a couple more seasons, so we'll check back in a couple of years to see how it stands against the original series then. So yeah, congrats to the guys at Disney, congrats to the guys at Marvel, everyone who worked on this show. They absolutely smoked this shit. They knocked it clean out the park. I am satisfied, I am happy, I cannot wait for Season 2. And if you're still here, it kind of just makes sense that, you check out one of these videos. I suggest the one on the left, but the one on the right is also pretty good.